Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Northwest Small Batch Brewing. I am Stephen, and yeah, it is morning for me, so good morning. Little brew talk today, but before we get started, take a look around my channel. I do a lot of homebrewing type of videos, so if you like what you see and you want to see upcoming videos, hit the subscribe button so that way you're notified every time I put out a new video. And of course, if you hit the like button, it really helps get my videos noticed in the YouTube search algorithms. Aww. Let's get started. So today's video, I don't know if this came across your news feed or not, but for whatever reason, Google must have figured I like homebrewing. So I got this in my news feed. It's from Brulosophy, and they have a 2022 survey that they did on homebrewing. I didn't even know that this existed. Apparently they've been doing it for years, because if you go to the link for the survey, it shows you historical information, so you can compare like to this year's with other years' surveys. So I encourage you, I'll put the link in the description, and I encourage you to go check out Brulosophy's homebrew survey, and you can peruse it in more depth. I just wanted to go over, I thought it would be fun just to go over a couple of the survey results that were kind of interesting. Some of them, you know, personally I would expect. It's kind of what I've noticed. So let's get started. So the first thing they talk about is demographics, like who's, excuse me, who's homebrewing. And it's not surprising, but it's a little disappointing. Like 98% of homebrewers are male, 2% are female. Now it does not take into account, you know, modern day genders. So I don't know if that's because nobody identified differently, or yeah, I don't know. I don't have that kind of granular information, but that's all it tells me, which is too bad. I would like to see more diversity in homebrewing. So with that being said, I am a huge fan of Sarah Flora's homebrewing channel. I think it's called Flora Brewing. Go check it out. It's a good channel, and she's one of the few female homebrewers out there that really is doing a great job. Age-wise, demographics. So most people who are homebrewing are 30 to 39. That's almost 40% of people homebrewing are 30 to 39. And then 26% are 40 to 49. So between 30 and 50 basically is your most common age group for homebrewing. That's a pretty big demographic. And this is not surprising, I don't think, to any of us who homebrew. Again, disappointing but not surprising. 93, almost 94% are white Caucasian, followed by Hispanic and Latino, and then it goes down from there. But again, disappointing. I'd like to see a more wide range of genders and races and whatever you want to call it in homebrewing. Let's see, what else? What do people do who homebrew? This is not as interesting. I'm going to skip this pretty quickly, but I believe like 19% are engineers, 18% are, well, I can't quite tell, but 31% said other. So to be honest with you, most people are not reporting what their what jobs, kind of jobs they have in the real world. But engineering, computer science, education, that sort of stuff is usually towards the top. Geography. Most people who homebrew are in the United States, 62%, followed by Europe, 20%. And then Oceania and Canada are tied at 7%, which surprises me. And then, of course, Latin America and United Arab Emirates are down at 2%. So most people are in the U.S., but we're a big country, so I mean, I'm not sure it's fair to say that, you know, I think that has to be taken into account. There's population-wise probably more people here. Housing types, this is not as interesting to me, but most people who brew own their own house, and that's where they're brewing, like physically, 77%. 11% are brewing in an apartment that they rent. So after homeowners becomes apartment renters, there's a great homebrewing channel, the Apartment Brewer. If you're interested in that, it's totally doable to brew beer in an apartment. I did it before I bought my house. And that's followed by 7% who rent a house and then 4% who own an apartment. I don't know, how can you own an apartment? Is it an apartment if you own it, or is it a condo? Anyway, yeah, let's keep going. I'm sorry if I'm moving quickly through this, but there's a lot of stuff here. And like I said, it gets more granular. If you go to the actual website and look at the actual survey, you can look at prior years and get more granular with it. And I'm not going over every single thing that they did a survey on, because some of it's just, I mean, it's okay. It just doesn't interest me that much. Where are people getting their information? Like if you want to get recipes or education or ask questions about homebrewing, what are people doing? I'm sure that years ago people were going to books, the library. But these days it's a tie, believe it or not. 30% of people are going to Reddit and Facebook. I don't really use Facebook. I have a Facebook, like a personal Facebook page, not one for my YouTube channel. But yeah, I just don't, I'm not a big, I know this is kind of ironic to say on a YouTube channel, but I'm really not a big social media fan. I just don't like all the negativity and rhetoric, and people sometimes get behind a computer and nobody can see them or actually, look at them face to face, and they feel like it's okay to say anything they want and be nasty and rude. And yeah, I don't like that. So anyway, yeah, Reddit and Facebook. I don't know. I don't know what Facebook, where people are going on Facebook. Comment below if you know where people are going, if you have some Facebook links. I'm curious, like where people are getting brewing information. Maybe it's just YouTube channels that have Facebook pages. I don't know. YouTube is 15%, so the next place people are going is YouTube. And then it just goes down from there, very low amounts, like 5% to 3%, where you go to homebrew stores, the American Homebrewers Association. Yeah, so there you go. And there's some that are even less, like Twitter, Instagram. Surprisingly, the Brewers Friend forum, I mean, you have to be a member to see it, but all that stuff is pretty low. Brulosophy, even, the people that did this survey, less than 1%. And they do have some good information on this website, like on loggering and different things. So it's not just the survey. So it's worth a look to check it out. How many gallons of beer are people making at home in general? Well, 47%, so almost half, are between 5 and 50 gallons, which makes sense. That equates to about, which is the next survey result, how many batches are people making per month? Per month, 64% are between 0 and 1 batch per month. And so if you're doing like a 5-gallon batch, yeah, that makes sense. That's what people are doing mostly. They're making the 5.5-gallon batches once a month, which is what I do. Followed by 50 to 100. So there are people that are making, double that, like the 10-gallon batches. Anything more than that gets more rare. It happens, it's just not as common. And anybody who's brewing more than once a month is pretty rare. 35% are doing 2 to 4 batches a month, and they might be making smaller batches. Who knows? Let's move on. Style of beer most frequently brewed. It's interesting. What's interesting to me is that I don't fall into this at all. The number one style brewed at home is the IPA, APA, DIPA, those kinds of beers, IPA and their variants, which I am not a fan of, so go figure. Then it follows up with Pale Ale, then Belgian, then Mild Bitter, Extra Special Bitter, Porter Stouts toward the bottom, Amber Brown Ale towards the bottom. There's a couple more that are even below that, but it's interesting. I do like a Pale Ale, but yeah, IPA just takes it too far for me, but they are super popular. What else do we have? Other beverages brewed. So after beer, which is the most common, would be cider. And then following cider, I think was pretty close, was wine and mead. Although mead is technically wine, but they split it. Then kombucha is the next one. Then sake, and then whatever fall under other. So cider is on the rise. Recipe design. Where are people going to get their recipes, design their recipes, that sort of thing? yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly people are going to Brewfather. I'm pretty sure that's a software, but I'm not 100% on that. Followed by Beersmith. I hear a lot of people using Beersmith. I've never used either of those. And then Brewer's Friend, which is what I use. That's the third most common. Other than that, now this is really interesting. So the next most common is just a personal spreadsheet that people keep. And then Grainfather's recipe builder is after that. So I find that fascinating that more people are using Excel spreadsheets than the Grainfather recipe builder. And then it just kind of, goes down from there. But those are the most common. So there's really only the three big recipe designers: Brewfather, Beersmith, and Brewer's Friend. I thought there was more. So I found that interesting. Styles. What do I have here? I had to write this out. So this makes sense. I mean, but the survey says that most people starting out in homebrewing start with extract or a mix of all grain and extract, and then eventually move to all grain. It was like 90-something+% moved to all grain eventually. So that's pretty common, I think. So what kind of all grain method for making beer? The majority are doing all-in-one electric systems. There's been a huge increase in all-in-one electric systems over the years, and that is by far the most popular way to brew beer. Followed by brew in the bag. It didn't say specifically what they meant by that, because brew in the bag is also used in an all-in-one system. I think what they've referred to when they were saying brew in the bag may be specifically using a pot on the stove or a pot on a propane burner outside with a bag. And then batch sparging is the next all-grain method, followed by fly sparging, and then the least favorite was no sparge. So, interesting. Wort chilling methods. This was not as interesting, but the number one wort chilling method was immersion chillers, followed by counterflow chillers. Number 3 was plate chillers. Number 4, just using the old school water bath. And number 5, the no-chill method. So, pretty expected, I think. Yeast harvesting, interesting here. Almost 60% of people do not harvest yeast. So I thought that would be higher. I thought more people were harvesting yeast because I see it a lot on YouTube channels. I don't do it. It's just not something I'm into, but it's interesting to see that most people are not into it. Yeast type. There is a preference, although just slightly, towards dry yeast, followed by, of course, liquid yeast. I mean, there's only really 2 options, right? And then there's a no preference. But yeah, dry is just barely eking out, a little higher than the liquid option. Packaging method. This does not surprise me either, especially because people are always pushing this, and it makes sense. 70% of homebrewers will keg their beer, while only 21% are bottling it, as far as their full, normal packaging method, which makes sense to me because bottling, you quickly discover, is a pain in the butt. What else do we have here? We already said, okay, so power sources is kind of what this is. It looks like outdoor electric is the most common way to brew beer these days, followed by, interesting, so followed by outdoor propane, then outdoor natural gas, and then indoor electric. So indoor electric, not as popular, which is what I do, as outdoor electric. And then indoor on the stove is the least common. Batch size, we kind of went over this, but most common is 5 gallons, or 5.5 gallons. And then 20 plus gallons, I think, is the net. It goes up there. But yeah, the most common is 5 gallons because it just makes more sense to make 5 gallons of beer. Anyway, how many batches of beer are people making per day? Generally speaking, 88%. So most people are doing 1 batch and 1 fermentation per day. Now, some people will make 1 batch and split it into 2 different fermentations to do experiments, but that's only like 6%, so that's a pretty small group of people. And then there's people that do 2 batches and do 2 different fermentations, and that's only 5%. So the majority are doing 1 batch, 1 fermentation. Now, I'm getting close to wanting to close this video out because I don't want it to be too long, but this was really fascinating to me is water source. 43% are using unfiltered tap water, followed by filtered tap water, home RO water, store-bought RO water. I've never seen store-bought RO water. And then store-bought distilled. Then only 5% are doing store-bought spring water, which is what I do. The unfiltered tap scares me, and here's why. If you go on, you find that water adjustments, the majority of people are not making any water adjustments. That is the number one answer. So people are primarily using unfiltered water from the tap, and they are making no adjustments. Guys, at the very least, use a Campton tablet to get rid of the chlorine and chlorine in the water. Where I live, I could probably get away with it because we have pretty decent water here. But, you know, there are parts of the country here, and I'm sure in other places, that your water might be hard or might not be good, or it might be high levels of lead or something. So if you don't know, boy, I don't know. It's kind of makes me nervous. And if you're using RO water or distilled water, I'm hoping that you're adding back some brewing salts and minerals to the water. Although, according to this, you're not. So I don't know. So let's see, perceptions. So this is what people believe. I'm going to go through this real quick because, like I said, we're getting lengthy on this video. Water chemistry is key. That's a very popular belief, and I think that's true. All grain equates to better beer than extract. Believe it or not, there's a high belief in that. I don't believe that. I think extract can be just as good. But there's a really strong belief still that all grain is better. Let's see. I'm just jumping through here real quick. Lager fermentation must be cold. It's kind of an arf and arf here, like half and half of people believe that. You don't, especially if you do pressure fermentation. That's not true. So. Clear wort in your fermenter equates to clear beer in your glass. Most people disagree. So that's good because I disagree with that too. Hot side aeration will give you off flavors. Most people disagree. I think that's been debunked at this point, so I'm glad that people are on board with that, about disagreeing with that. Macro beer is evil. Macro beer means the big brewers, you know, like Heineken and Budweiser and any of the big folks. People disagree. Macro beer is not evil, so I'm glad to see that. Gelatin fining strips aromas. People disagree. I also disagree. And transferring to a secondary equates to better beer. People disagree. I also disagree. And lastly, greater than 60-minute boil will lead to DMS. Less than a 60-minute boil will give you DMS, and vast majority disagree, and I do as well. And there's been a lot of experiments with that kind of proving that it's not true. Okay, real quickly here. People are mostly getting their supplies from online stores, followed by your local, homebrew store. So online, then local homebrew, but they're pretty close. People are mostly spending $50 or just under $50 a month on making beer. That sounds right. People, daily homebrew, 68%. Sometimes have a daily homebrew. 82% sometimes have a commercial, or sometimes none as far as daily commercial beer. So if people are going to have a beer, they're going to have a homebrew over commercial. Preferences right here, 52% prefer homebrew, 40% have no preference, followed by commercial. So again, most people are grabbing the homebrew over commercial. Facial hair, this one was just funny. 46% of people who homebrew have short beards, and 35% are clean shaven. So it's a growing trend. I've seen it. A lot of having a beard in the home brewing or whiskey world is pretty common. Last thing here, and then I'm going to close this real quick. Electric brewing systems has exploded, it says here. 2 in 5 people now report using some kind of electric setup in their all-grain brewing. So that is the way it's going. Less is more. So it says overall people seem to be brewing less than in years past, making only between 5 and 50 gallons a year, which again equates to about a 5-gallon batch every month. And people are spending less than $50 a month on brewing their beer. And a significant number of people go days without drinking any homebrew, which is all true for me. It talks a little bit about the increase in people using online brewing communities like Reddit and Facebook. And that's it. So, sorry to go run through it so quickly, but you know, these videos tend to get long pretty quickly. So, hopefully you found that interesting. Check the description for the link to the survey. And I will see you in a week for another video. And as always, keep on home brewing. See you soon.